If you are looking to build a home theater on a budget, today we're going to be looking at the brand new ELAC Debut 3.0 DB63 bookshelf speakers. Now, ELAC has been known for making quality products, quality speakers, quality subwoofers in the budget series, but it wasn't too long ago that I found out they have a whole slew of products all the way up to some uber high-end, very expensive speakers. But today I want to focus on their budget, their entry level, and I have to say there's not much entry about this. Typically when we talk about value, we talk about budget, we think of, man, they're not going to sound that great. But I've been really pleased with what I'm hearing out of these Debut 3.0s. Now the DB63s retail for just $449 a pair. So in the hi-fi world, you can easily spend $1,000 a pair, $1,500 a pair, $2,000 a pair, and it just continues to go up. And I realize a lot of you don't have that type of budget, especially when you're first starting into the home theater space. You're wanting to have this cool home theater, but the finances just quite aren't there yet. Well, the good news, I believe with this system, you can get a killer sound setup, a surround setup, even maybe a basic 5.1 system, probably for under $1,500, maybe $2,000, just depending on what models you're looking at. Now, before we dive into the review of the DB63s, I want to give a big thanks to our channel sponsor, Arendal Sound. Arendal Sound is preparing to launch their new 1528 series. Arendal says the name 1528 holds a special place in our hearts. It references the year that Arendal was first mentioned in historical records as Arendelle, a name that inspired the magical kingdom in Frozen. We don't have much information other than they will be bigger, better, and more luxurious than anything Arendal Sound has created to date. I'm looking forward to experiencing the new 1528 series here on the Youthman channel. So the first thing I want to talk about is just aesthetics and what these speakers are comprised of. And so we're looking at a two-way speaker, okay? So these have a 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter. And you'll notice right in the front of the tweeter, we got this funky little metallic metal piece. Well, that's actually, it kind of serves two functions. Number one, I think it looks cool. It kind of breaks up just the monotony of just this all black front face, but it also performs a function, and it's called a phase plug. And the phase plug is going to help control the dispersion of that tweeter. With the phase plug, it really helps to control that sound and give it just a much more pleasing appeal when you're listening to music or when you're watching movies. And so down below the 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter, we have a 6.5-inch woofer. These speakers are kind of in the mid-size. They're not big, massive monitors, but they're also not super tiny bookshelf speakers. So ideally, you could take these and put them on speaker stands. In my case, in my living room, when I first listened to them, I just put them on my entertainment center, on my cabinet. And so there's a lot of different versatility there with a small bookshelf speaker. Now, being these speakers are only $450 a pair, we're not going to expect a real wood veneer, but instead we do have a nice vinyl wrap. This is a black ash. And so this looks very clean. It looks very aesthetically nice, but it's not like over the top. You're not going to get a wood veneer on these types of speakers at that price point. But one thing they've done with this new series is they've implemented magnetic grills. Now, I have been a fan of magnetic grills for a long, long time. Anytime that a manufacturer can add magnetic grills, that's a great thing. But the truth is, not all brands add them the best. And what I mean by that is it's a bit frustrating sometimes when you take a magnetic grill and you go to place it on it, and then you have to spend a few seconds kind of adjusting it because it doesn't like lock into place. The great thing about the Debut 3.0s that I really like, the magnetic grills, you can see here, I've got 2 fingers on this and I can bring it to the front and it will lock in place exactly where it needs to be. And typically that's because they're using larger magnets in the inside of the speaker so that it locks it into place and it doesn't allow for a lot of shifting of that. If you look down at the bottom of the speaker grill, you can see this little notch, and that allows you to be able to see the logo of the ELAC Debut 3.0 speakers. Now, if we look at the rear of the speaker, we've got a large rear port, and that port is flared. And typically what happens is with the flare, that just helps all of that bass air come out of there and just evenly be distributed. And the biggest thing is you don't want that coming out and causing what they call port noise. And while I was demoing these, I've never heard any kind of port noise. And so that flared bass is providing that smooth output as the air is being forced outside the speaker. Below that, we've got our 5-way binding post. Now that allows you to add bare wire. You can use spades, a lot of different variety. My preference has always been to add banana plugs because it makes it easy for me to install and uninstall as I review speakers. So aesthetically, I really like the design. These I could see easily going in a living room setup, bedroom setup, maybe even an office setup. And these are going to look great in your space. So how do they sound? My living room is actually quite large. It's about 25 foot wide. I believe it's about 15 feet deep. And I've got 12-foot ceilings, so even that space in itself is a pretty large room. But then that room opens up to my kitchen, it opens up to our dining area, as well as a breakfast nook. And so number one, I knew going into this, these 6.5-inch drivers aren't going to provide a ton of bottom end, and I was correct. Even playing these at full range in a large room, they did decent, but again, I'm not expecting a 6.5-inch driver to add any kind of pressurization, especially when watching a movie. Now with a budget-friendly system like this, you're probably not going to be connecting it to, like, say, a Kaleidoscape. You probably don't have dual 18 subwoofers like I do here in the theater room. And so I wanted to replicate a real-world scenario for this price point speakers. And so I've got a smaller Arendal 1V subwoofer that I paired these up with to handle the lower frequencies. Now, one thing that you'll find when you have a pair of bookshelf speakers is when you pass off those lower frequencies, it will allow the bookshelf speakers to actually play louder because they don't have to handle those lower frequencies. Let the subwoofer handle that. That's what they're designed for. That's what they're made for. And I believe that's true even in music, but absolutely especially when it comes to home theater. Now I can say, even in a 2.1 system, I was pretty stinking impressed. One thing I realized quickly is that these speakers had a really enveloping sound. I've always appreciated when a speaker can wrap around my space and really just provide almost like this 3D sound versus just sound coming directly from the speakers. And these Debut 3.0s were able to do that in my living room. So while I'm cranking up Top Gun Maverick, I was doing this right here. I had a huge grin on my face because I couldn't believe that in this massive room, or at least a pretty large room, living room setup, that two little bookshelf speakers were allowing me to get excited. Even though I didn't have a center channel, even though I didn't have side surrounds or rear surrounds, I just had these two speakers and a subwoofer. And one thing I want to share with you is that even if you have just a 2.1 system, you can still get an amazing experience in the home theater space as well as music. And so I've always encouraged you guys to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey of your home theater. And part of that process sometimes means I'm starting off with a pair of bookshelf speakers. Later on down the road, add a subwoofer. Later on down the road, buy a center channel. Later on down the road, as funds become available, then buy your surrounds or your rear surrounds or another subwoofer, or add your Dolby Atmos speakers. And so don't be afraid to build this home theater over time as funds become available. Now, I listen to music in the living room as well as several other home theater demos. And again, I was just very pleased with what I was hearing. Now, these speakers didn't blow me away. They didn't, I didn't look at these and go, man, these should be $10,000. No, they are great quality for $550, but I guarantee you, I could find some other brands out there that cost a lot more than $550, and these would equally compete, if not exceed them. So after I spent some time in the living room, I wanted to see what it sounded like in a dedicated theater room, and in particularly a room that is acoustically treated and has better acoustics than my living room. Now I tried a variety of angles. I tried straight on, didn't like that. I tried them a little bit towed in, a little bit more. I kept going. And even at one time, I even did kind of what I consider an extreme toe in. And where that is where you take the tweeter of the left speaker and aim it kind of at the right arm of this chair. And then I take the right speaker and aim that tweeter at this left arm. So they basically are crossing over in the middle. And again, I kind of like that, but I didn't. And so what I found worked best in this room is I ended up moving them closer about 1 foot. And I don't know what that did acoustically and how that's interacting with my room, but whatever that did really opened up these speakers. I got that kind of immersive sound from a pair of 2-channel speakers. I also got that center image that I was lacking when they were a little bit further back. And so with all speakers, don't be afraid to play with the position. Bring them out from your wall a little bit, push them closer, separate them more, bring them closer in, toe them out. Play with that placement because that costs you nothing, and that can drastically impact how they're going to perform in your room because your acoustics and your room and your layout is much different than mine. But once I got them where I feel that they sound the best in this room, man, I gotta say, I'm really enjoying these speakers. Now, even though this room is much smaller than my living room, we're talking 13 feet wide, 19 feet deep with 10-foot ceilings, the bass from these small bookshelf speakers isn't overwhelming. I mean, there's 6.5-inch drivers. They only dig down to about 42 hertz. And in my living room, I had a small subwoofer, but in here, I'm using JTR Captivator RS2s, which each have dual 18s, as well as a 4,000 watt continuous amplifier. So in this room, I kind of went extreme. So out there, I was using a smaller subwoofer. In here, I was thinking, can these bookshelf speakers keep up with a pair of quad 18s? And it was fun, man, I'll be honest with you. So I ended up backing the subwoofers down quite a bit because if you got too much bass, then it just sounds unbalanced. But I backed my subwoofers. I've got JTR RS2s. There's a 4,000 watt amplifier in each one of them. But I backed those down in my Anthem AVM 70 and just backed it down to -10 dB. Guys, I'm telling you, that was absolutely some smooth sounding music. The vocals on these, the highs I didn't feel were bright. The mid-range was right where I wanted it to be. And I would just sit back and listen and listen and listen. Again, these aren't amazing speakers, but for $450, these things are pretty dang sweet. So one thing I'm excited about this series, I'd love to be able to review the center channel and probably even the towers at some point. And ELAC even has some higher end speakers. They've got some mid-tier speakers, and I'd love to eventually get some of those in and check out, all right, what does an extra $500 get you? What does an extra $1,000 get you in the ELAC series? Of course, it's going to give you nicer finishes, but they also, I'm seeing on their website, they use a different tweeter. So I'm curious to see how that sounds. But I can tell you right now, I'm extremely pleased with what I'm seeing as well as what I'm hearing with these speakers. Lot of bang for your buck, a lot of value in these, both aesthetically as well as performance-wise. I can see you using them in a music setup. I think my guess is they're probably better suited for a home theater because they're not as critical. Those of you that are used to like really high-end 2-channel setups, this probably isn't going to be what you're looking at. But again, you're probably not looking at a $550 pair of bookshelf speakers if that's kind of your bag. But I'm enjoying what I'm hearing, and I like the way that these sound. I like the way that they look, and I would love to get in more ELAC speakers. So one thing I'm really excited too is part of the reason why I wanted to get these speakers in is, as you guys, I've been sharing with you over the past several months, that we're starting a new business called Obsessed Home Theater, and I'm partnering with Matt Mormon with Obsessed Garage. And one thing that we're wanting to do is provide solutions for just different price points. And so my channel over the past 6 years has always been what I would consider kind of in the mid-tier. On my channel, I haven't reviewed a lot of like super budget friendly speakers and subwoofers, although I've reviewed some monolith speakers, I've reviewed some Polk Audio speakers, but the vast majority has kind of been in that mid-tier. In fact, the first set of speakers I ever reviewed were about, I think at that time, they were probably $2,400 a pair, maybe $2,500 a pair. So they're definitely kind of, again, what I would consider mid-tier. But I don't have a lot of experience with the budget-friendly, the stuff that's in the $300, $400, $500 range and sub $1,000 range. And so when I was at Audio Advice Live this past, probably a couple weeks ago, I had a chance to talk with Chris Walker with ELAC, and I just shared with him the vision of Obsessed Home Theater, and that I wanted to find a brand that offers a great value for my audience. Something that I could get behind, a brand that provides great quality but also doesn't break the bank. So I wanted to get in their speakers, and again, I want to hear more about ELAC. I want to listen to more of their system. I probably, like I said, I would love to hear a full ELAC home theater setup, even with some of their subwoofers. They've got like 8 subwoofers from like super budget friendly, couple $100, $350 I believe is their lowest, all the way up to several thousands and multiple thousands of dollars. And the same thing with their speakers as well. And so I'm curious, they've piqued my curiosity. And so far, ELAC, I'm a fan. I love what you're doing. But I think that these have the potential of being definitely a huge candidate for Obsessed Home Theater as we begin to recommend a really great home theater system that really fits that budget conscious and budget friendly price point. Well guys, I'll leave links to ELAC's website down in the description below, so make sure you check them out. They've got a slew of products, and if you ever get a chance to listen to them at maybe Audio Advice Live or another trade show, absolutely hit them up, talk to those guys. They're a great group of folks, and I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, make sure you like and subscribe, and as always, you guys have an incredible week. God bless, and we will catch you in the next video.